Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 418. Thank you for joining me. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Happy Monday. Happy summer. Second day of summer. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last podcast and the podcast we've been doing over the past, I guess this will be the fourth in this series. And what we're talking about in these podcasts is the 250th anniversary, the 250th birthday of the United States that's going to be celebrated here in the next 2 weeks. And it's the 3rd century of the United States. And I've been relating the upcoming celebration of the 250th birthday of the United States to the 3rd century, the crisis of the 3rd century in the Roman Empire, and talking about the fact that many of the world's great empires have this period that they go into around the 3rd century. And let me see I forget who that quote that, hold on one second. I didn't have this ready. It is, so yeah, there's all of these empires that around 200 years, but there's a quote from the famous quote from a historian. I think he's a British historian, or he's actually from Scotland. Yep, there it is right there. Yep, he's a Scottish historian. And this is what he says: empires and the 200-year quote. The most famous historical reference to a 200-year lifespan of great civilizations comes from Alexander Fraser Tyler, Lord Woodhouseley, a Scottish historian and judge. And he writes, the average age of the world's greatest civilization is about 200 years. So in that 3rd century, just like what happens in the Roman Empire, there's a crisis in the 3rd century of the Roman Empire that changes the Roman Empire forever. So anyway, we're in our 3rd century, and I've been identifying the crises that are threatening the long-term survival of the United States. We talked about first the election crises. And the election crises, I'm going to start with this clip because we talked about how fraudulent our elections are. And this is a crisis that it's a crisis for many reasons. It's a crisis because we have a system of democracy, theoretically, where people are supposed to cast their votes and elect people to represent them. But if you have fraudulent elections, then people don't have faith in the elections, and then you have civil unrest. That's what January 6th was about. And that's what, there's going to be more civil unrest when people, if you go and look at the video from George Bush's inauguration in 2001 and all the civil unrest around that election, you're going to have more civil unrest because people don't have faith in the elections, that you need to have faith in the elections in the type of system that we have. And we talked about California in the podcast that we did about the election crisis, but I want to revisit that a little bit. And that was the first crisis that we identified. This is what I've learned since that episode that we found out is going on in Los Angeles.
A Los Angeles County woman has agreed to plead guilty to paying people on Skid Row to register to vote. Federal officials announcing the charge against Brenda Lee Brown Armstrong this week, which carries a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. The National News Desk Jeff Harris joining us, and according to her plea agreement, we do know Brown Armstrong allegedly worked as a petition circulator for nearly 2 decades. There is striking social media video. What else is coming to light.
So in that plea agreement, Brown Armstrong admitting to working as a paid petition circulator, allegedly targeting the homeless while gathering signatures throughout the Los Angeles area. The bombshell admission coming after federal officials got their hands on an undercover video.
So the undercover video was done by, I think, James O'Keefe. And this is the undercover
Fraudulent
video.
Petitioners on Skid Row are now paying the homeless to forge names, forge addresses, and forge signatures of registered voters.
So this woman who pled guilty, and I guarantee you, she's not the only one. This woman is not the only one that is doing this. This is why California's elections are so fraudulent. Nobody trusts what's going on in California. This is election fraud. And she's paying homeless people. California has the largest homeless population in the nation. Huge homeless problem in California. Paying homeless people, registering them to vote, all using the same address and a address of the woman that is doing this. One of the people, at least the one that is pleading guilty to this because she was caught because of James O'Keefe's secret video using the same address. It's an election fraud.
On Skid Row are now paying the homeless to forge names, forge addresses, and forge signatures of registered voters.
So you can't sign petitions unless you're a registered voter. So she registered all these people to vote, use the same address. So when it's time to vote, all of the ballots, because all of these homeless people have used her address to sign these petitions, all the ballots are going to the same address, same house. This is what's going on in California. I just wanted to refresh you on what's going on a little bit, and because that was our first crises in America's third century crises that we're talking about. This is another video that I want to show you about the elections that just happened in California that were completely fraudulent. It takes a week for them to harvest all these ballots. They give themselves a week for them to harvest ballots. Listen to this story right here. This went on in Los Angeles. Take a listen.
Today, I'm going to talk about one of the strangest results in the LA County vote in the June 2nd California primary. And that is the passage of Measure ER, a 0.5% sales tax increase that will take the sales tax in Los Angeles County from a very high 9.75% to the almost unthinkable 10.25%, one of the highest in the country. Why did this happen? County officials put this measure on the ballot because they say that county health services are going to run out of money. And they blame President Donald Trump and his One Big Beautiful bill, which made some reforms to Medicaid funding going to the states. It didn't actually cut that funding, it just slowed the rate of growth. But whatever the cause,
they didn't have any more money, though.
LA County voters have been saying for months that the cost of living is intolerable. In fact, it's driving tens of thousands of people to leave.
Just listen to this,
people. In our
people.
own poll at the California Post, we found that the cost of living was the number one issue for voters in this election.
Cost of living is the number one issue in this election, in the municipal elections in Los Angeles County. Cost of living is the number one issue nationwide. And there's a measure on the ballot for a tax increase, a sales tax increase, to take it to over 10%. Now listen to this. Listen to this. We're talking about voter fraud. We're talking about election crises. This was the first crises we identified. Take a listen.
Of people to leave. And in our own poll at the California Post, we found that the cost of living was the number one issue for voters in this election. Initially, it looked like Measure ER, the tax increase, was going to fail. But with late ballots coming in, especially for Nithya Raman, the tax increase passed. It came in just over 50% and over continues 50%. To do better.
Listen to this. Listen to this. That the early ballots, when people went out, the actual people went out to vote, they rejected. Of course, they're going to reject a sales tax increase. Who's going to vote for a sales tax increase? He says that he's not 100% right, that a sales tax, it hurts poor people more than anyone. Why would anyone go and vote for a sales tax? But as these late ballots came in for Nithya Ramos who leapfrogged Spencer Pratt. They also, these people who voted for Nithya Ramos or Nithya, whatever her name is, that they also voted for the sales tax. This is election fraud, people.
So what happened? Well, perhaps voters were swayed by the county's argument that they needed this money for healthcare. Perhaps people were simply confused. They thought maybe they were voting for a tax on other people, but it's not a tax on billionaires. It's not a tax on rich people. It's a tax on everybody. And in fact, sales taxes tend to be more regressive. They hurt the poor more.
So the late ballots not only help the councilwoman to leapfrog Spencer Pratt, they also help the measure to raise taxes because they're running out of money. All right. So that was the first crisis we identified when we started talking about this. And then we went to the education crises, and the education crises. I showed you this, I showed you many clips of idiots on the street and not being able to answer, basic questions that they should be able to know to participate in a society like ours, where we are, called to govern ourselves, that those who govern at the consent of the governed, and we have to be intelligent enough to know, who to vote for, to understand the issues. And you can't even tell me, some of the clips that I played in that podcast, when we discussed this crisis, the education crisis. There's one guy in that was answering questions, one of the street questions. It says that Asia bordered Canada in the northern part of the United States. They couldn't tell you who the factions were in the Civil War, or who the United States gained their independence from. And these people are voting. This is a crisis, and this was the second crisis we identified. We played the clips of Rahm Emanuel and the article that he wrote in response to this this report, this federal report, which came out in September, and the article that Rahm Emanuel made identifying this education crisis. But this is what we identified as a crisis, the crisis number 2. What do recent NAEP scores tell us, and what do they miss? Last week, scores from the NAEP is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Last week, scores from the latest National Assessment of Educational Progress, known as the NAEP, were released for 12th graders in math and reading, and 8th graders in science showed declines from both groups. Often referred to as the nation's report card, the test is given to samples of students in 4th, 8th, and 12th graders across the country as a specific measurement of achievement. Students are scored into 3 categories: basic, proficient, and advanced. For 12th graders, 45% performed below the EAEP's basic level for math, 5% lower than the 2019 scores. The last year test was administered for that grade in that subject. In reading, 32% were below basic, down for. So I was just talking about in that podcast that these man on the street interviews, that you could say that they're anecdotal, and that they're interviewing 100 people, and they find the 5 people that don't know anything, and that's what they're putting on the internet. It's anecdotal. These are hard facts from testing that America's getting dumb. And I explained to you that it is all by design. It was the education system is doing exactly what it was designed to do by Rockefeller, Carnegie, John Dewey, and many others, that they knew what they were doing in dumbing down the culture. So this is the second crisis we identified. And then last week, we identified the debt crisis and the United States approaching $40 trillion in debt. It's not only approaching $40 trillion in debt. We are almost 140% of GDP debt to GDP ratio. Takes 134% of U.S. debt to GDP. Takes $1 trillion to service the debt. As the debt grows, this is going to increase. We got a nearly $2 trillion budget deficit. That the United States, the debt crisis is a huge crisis. Huge crisis. Explain that to you. And explain to you in the last podcast, just like the education crisis is by design, the debt crisis is by design. They did this to us. That all of the debt that we have, all of this debt was created over the last 26 years. We looked at this in the last podcast, that if you go back in time on the debt clock, you can see on this day in 2000, in the year 2000, when Bill Clinton was president, that the national debt was under $6 trillion. And today we're approaching $40 trillion. So all of this happened over the past 26 years. Didn't want to get there. All of this happened over the past 26 years over the administration of these people. These people did this to you. They created the debt crisis. They created it on purpose. So trying to explain to you. And I don't know how much more clear that I can be that this was not by accident. That this debt started, you can see, and I explained it in the last podcast, this chart represents $1 trillion for every color, and how rapidly we started adding $1 trillion to the national debt. And you can see all of this started to happen during the administration of George Bush, but it was set up under the administration of his brother from another mother. This is what Bush said. This is what Bush calls Clinton, my brother from another mother, that it was all set up under the administration of the brother from another mother. And the guy who died today, Alan Greenspan at the Federal Reserve. We looked at this document. I've shown this document so many times and talked about this article so many times from NPR. What if we paid off the debt? That this is a secret document that we don't get. It is not made public until 2011 through a FOIA request, because NPR goes in through a FOIA request, achieves this secret document that was kept secret from us until a decade after it was written. We get the document in 2011. It was written in 2000, and the document is called Life After Debt. Under the Clinton administration, they identified that the United States was going to be completely debt-free in 12 years, and it was a crisis that they had to prevent. How did they prevent it? How did they prevent it? How did they prevent it? Well, they prevented it by staging a terrorist attack, taking us to war while cutting taxes. Biden was there for the whole thing in the Senate, helping to authorize the war as the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, helping to sell the war and get Democrats on board for Bush's war. Biden was there. These are the people who did this to you, who created the debt crisis. I tried to explain that to you. So those are the three crises that we have discussed that are facing the United States in our third century crisis. We played the clip of Fareed Zakaria making these statements about California, but like I was explaining when we talked about this, I believe this was in the first series where we talked about the election crisis in California, or no, this was in the second series when we talked about the education crisis, because California spends more on education than any other state, and education is failing here in California by design. But what Fareed Zakaria says here about California is true about the United States as well. Take a listen to what he says.
In Los Angeles, an overwhelmingly Democratic city, Spencer Pratt, a Republican former reality television personality, looked as if he might make the mayoral general election before finishing third.
Into those late ballots came in, voting for tax increases.
California Democrats will be tempted to dismiss all this as a sideshow. But the frustration is real and justified. California is one of the most dynamic places on the planet. It has Silicon Valley, Hollywood, world-class universities, extraordinary agriculture, ports, talent, and natural beauty.
Yeah, all that is true about America. California is America. There's many parts of America that have all of this stuff. I mean, California is definitely blessed, without a doubt, but Texas has ports. Texas has industry and all this stuff. I mean, there's many other states that have all this stuff. But what he's saying about California is America. America is very rich, very prosperous, and is doing very well on paper, but I mean, there's some serious crises going on. I mean, America's, 134% of GDP, debt to GDP. That's a huge crisis. $40 trillion in debt. So despite America being prosperous, having all of this stuff that he's saying here about California, America's got serious problems. Not saying that America's not prosperous. Not saying that the stock market is not killing it. Not saying that people are not doing well right now. We're talking about the potential for future generations in America to do well.
Democrats will be tempted to dismiss all this as a sideshow. But the frustration is real and justified. California is one of the most dynamic places on the planet. It has Silicon Valley, Hollywood, world-class universities, extraordinary agriculture,
it's America.
Ports,
it's America.
Talent,
it's America.
And natural beauty. But it is a case study in how a rich society can spend more and more while producing less and less of what its ordinary citizens need.
That's true about America. That's not only true about California. What Fareed Zakaria says right there, that even though America is prosperous and even though America seems to be doing well, America has some huge holes. There's some huge issues that threaten the future of America. We're going to talk about today's crises. We'll get there in a moment because this was a clip that I had from last podcast that I wanted to show you, because this is the eventual effect of, when you start seeing things that are going on in America, the holes in America, the fault lines underneath this, beautiful society that we have going on here. This is the eventual effect when you have income inequality, affordability issues, inflation and it going up while wages stay stagnant. When you see this going on, this is the eventual effect of that, and this is going to increase what you see going on here. Take a listen.
When we talk about democratic socialists, how are they viewed inside the Democratic Party?
Yeah, you mentioned New York, you mentioned Vermont. Obviously, there's the D.C. mayor. We've seen it in Pennsylvania as well. The Democratic socialists seem to be doing considerably better than they used to be, and they have the chance to knock off, in fact, Democratic incumbents in Congress.
Socialism used to be a bad word in this country. No one wanted to be identified with being a socialist. But socialism, which is communism slowly, is growing in this country. And it's a natural effect of the new Gilded Age that we find ourselves in. So it's not surprising when you see us having, $40 trillion in debt and all of these other issues and crises that we're dealing with in this third century, that socialism would be on the rise. And it's on the rise, people.
Better than they used to be, and they have the chance to knock off, in fact, Democratic incumbents in Congress. And part of the reason for that, why we're seeing these Democratic socialists having such good chances or outright winning nominations, is take a look here. Net favorability among Dems. Democratic Socialists of America, look at that. A plus 17-point net favorability rating among Democrats. That is actually better. That is better than how congressional Democrats are viewed by Democrats at just plus 4 points. So no wonder that Democratic socialists have such a good chance, because simply put, they are a better brand at this point than Democrats in Congress.
Among Democrats, it's interesting.
So
to
the
see
socialists
who
are
they
basically
like more.
taking over the Democratic Party. And this is going to be a fight that you see going on in the primary next year. The party, many in the party want to take the party towards socialism. I don't know why. I don't know if they don't understand history. I don't know if they have ever read 1984 and understand what Orwell was talking about when he talks about English socialism who he despised socialism, but pick up a book, people. But yeah, this is the eventual effect, because when you have the type of debt crises, income inequality, the new Gilded Age that we're in right now, then yes, socialism is going to be on the rise because it's to be expected. It's to be expected. The conditions are set for more socialism. All right, so we talked about all of those crises in the past 3 podcasts. The election crises. We talked about the education crises, the debt crises, and today's the crises that we're going to focus on for the remainder of this podcast. Number 4 crisis threatening the future survival of the United States is treason. The treason crisis. And you guys know that I like to define terms, so we are talking about the same thing when we introduce a term. And treason, just we'll read a little bit here from the Wikipedia page. Treason is a crime of attacking a state authority to which one owes allegiance. You don't have to be a part of it. You owe allegiance. It's a betrayal. This typically includes acts such as participating in a war against one's own native country, attempting to overthrow its government, spying on its military, its diplomats, its officials, its secret service for a hostile foreign power, or attempting to kill a head of state. So it's basically a betrayal. I have the etymology here as well. Etymology of treason, betraying, betrayal of trust, disloyalty, breach of faith. From the Latin, to deliver, to surrender, a handing over is the etymology of this word. Think about Judas betraying Jesus, and he hands Jesus over to the Romans, or to the guards that arrest Jesus on the night. And Jesus says, "You betray me with a kiss." He kisses Jesus and betrays him and delivers him, surrenders him, hands him over, is what treason is. That's the idea of treason. And the United States is a very, very powerful country. No one denies that. We have a very, very powerful military, and it is a very difficult thing to destroy the United States militarily. This is why you need this is where the idea of a 5th column comes in, because you can't attack the United States from the north, south, east, or west, that you have to attack them from within the 5th column. This is how you bring down a great nation, through treason. This quote, I've talked about it before. It's attributed to Marcus Tullius Cicero. Cicero was a 1st century Roman senator, philosopher, historian. He writes a lot about the role of a citizen, the role of a nation, of a statesman. He was a contemporary of Julius Caesar, and he wrote a lot about treason. This quote is not a direct quote from him. It's attributed to him, but you can find a lot of these ideas in Cicero's writing. He was the quintessential statesman. Like, again, he wrote a lot about what it meant to be a citizen. The quote from John F. Kennedy in his inauguration speech, "Ask not what you can do for your nation, and ask not what you could do for your country," is what John Kennedy said, but ask what you can, or ask not what your country, your nation can do for you, but ask what you can do. That comes from Cicero. That's Cicero. So anyway, Cicero, this quote is attributed to him, but it doesn't come directly from him word for word, but you can find these ideas in his writing. A nation can survive its fools, even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. his sly whispers rustling through all of the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself, for the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in the accents familiar to his victims. He sounds just like us. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of the nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is to be less feared. The traitor is the plague. And I mean, that's the thing about the traitor, that the traitor is working for the outside forces, but he's working from within. He's the fifth column. He's working from within to destroy the pillars of the city from within, is what the traitor is. All right. So that's our fourth crisis, treason. And now I want to transition to something else. So we've talked about four different crises that I believe threaten the future of the United States in our third century. Election crises, education crises, debt crises, treason. So now I want to transition to something else. Benjamin Netanyahu was at this event over this weekend. And I believe this event was in Israel. Could have been here in the United States, because this news agency is a American news agency. They're actually stationed here in Southern California. It's called Jewish News Syndicate. That's what JNS is. And I'm not sure where the event was, but they had this event over the weekend, and everyone gave speeches. Mike Huckabee, Mark Levin. There's a lot going on over the weekend, and there's some things that I want to show you. Just tell you a little bit about who Jewish News Syndicate is. The Jewish News Syndicate is an American news agency wire service, primarily covers Jewish and Israeli-related topics and news, while officially nonpartisan, compared to its larger and older competitor, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. JNS is considered to be more conservative and hawkish. Hawkish is what it says. History. The wire service was launched in September 2011 and is an exclusive U.S. distribution deal with the Free Israeli Daily, Israel Hayom. And who is Israel Hayom? Israel Hayom was owned by Sheldon Adelson. It's now owned by Sheldon Adelson's wife, Miriam Adelson, runs this paper, Israel Hayom. Don't forget Israel Hayom, because I got a story from Israel Hayom that we're going to get to here in a moment. So, but Miriam Adelson. So this is a Miriam Adelson event, JNS. Anyway, so Netanyahu is there. He gave his speech, and I'm just going to I want to play some clips from some of the speakers that were at this event over the weekend. Take a listen to Netanyahu.
But I ask you, the Jews of America and the Jews of the diaspora, to do one thing: stand up. Don't cower. Don't be afraid. Fight back, because people will only respect us if we respect ourselves.
Now listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he's saying. The fourth crisis is treason. Treason. What is treason? Treason. He's talking to Jewish Americans, Jewish Americans that are that happen to be of Jewish descent, Jewish faith, if you will, but they're Americans. Their loyalty is supposed to be to America. And this is the Prime Minister of Israel addressing American Jews. Treason. And he's saying to the American Jews to stand with me and stand with Israel, even though you live in America, even though you are American and you have American citizenship, that because you're part of the Jewish diaspora and you're Jewish, doesn't matter if that you're American, that you need to be Jewish first. It's because Stephen A. Smith had this, he's been having these black conservative and black liberals have debates on his show, and he moderates debate. And last week there was Officer Tatum and this other black liberal that they got into this argument saying, are you black first or are you American first? Are you black first or American first? And the black liberal says, well, I'm black first. I'm black first. I'm black. And Stephen A. Smith agreed with I'm black first. So that's what Netanyahu's doing here. Same thing. He's saying that for the Jews in the diaspora that live in America, you have to be Jewish first, which I think is idiotic. I think it's idiotic to be black first. I think this is idiotic, but it's saying that I'm black first is not the same as saying that I'm loyal to some other nation. That's different. That's who he's talking to. He's talking to American Jews. That's who he's talking to.
But I ask you, the Jews of America and the Jews of the diaspora, to do one thing. Stand up. Don't cower. Don't be afraid. Fight back. Because people will only respect us if we respect ourselves. And when they level lies at us, throw back the truth and do it standing up. Stand up for the truth. Stand up for Israel. Stand up for the Jewish people. Stand up for the Jewish future.
Stand up for Israel. Stand up for Israel is what he's saying. You're American Jews. Stand up for Israel. And he's talking like he's the, not only the prime minister of a nation, the prime minister of a people, talking to the entire diaspora, everyone, people in America. And if you don't know this, the majority of Jews live in Israel and in America. I mean, we're talking about treason here, people. J.D. Vance has been making a lot of news because he's been very critical of Israel. I think that he's been critical because they're kind of making it difficult. We talked about in the last podcast the deal that Donald Trump's trying to make, and Donald Trump wants to try to bring peace and settle down some of the tensions. I don't believe he's ever going to be able to do that. I don't believe anyone is, but that is what President Trump is trying to do because that's good for America. If there's peace and we don't have to keep spending all this money, most of this money, when you look at the debt crises, most of this money is because we went after 9/11, which was staged. I mean, I don't even want to talk about that, but after 9/11, after they let 9/11 happen, and then they Bush did the tax cuts and took us while he's taking us to war, running up the debt because that's intentional. All that, most of this is because of what our foreign policy in the Middle East. So it's good for the United States to draw down the tensions in the Middle East. Trump's never going to be able to do that. And I don't believe he's ever going to be able to do that, but that's a noble mission and objective as the president of the United States of doing something that's good for the United States is to bring peace to the region. So we don't have to keep spending a bunch of money and sending troops over there. So this is what J.D. Vance says. He's in an interview here with Ali Beth Stuckey. And take a listen to what he says here. He's absolutely right. People are criticizing him over it, but he's absolutely right. Take a listen.
Is anti-Semitic. And so I do think that sometimes, advocates of Israel or pro-Israel people in the United States make two critical mistakes. One, on the one hand, is not delineating between America's interests and Israeli interests because they're not always the same. But
he said that people make a critical America's interests and Israel's interests are not the same. I mean, it depends on who's running Israel. Now, Israel's getting ready to have an election. If they elect a more moderate, group that runs the Israeli parliament and isn't in control there, and the objectives of that leadership in the United States more aligned. But if you have hardliners like Ben Gvir, Smotrich, and Netanyahu, no, our interests are not going to align all the time. Not necessarily not align with Israel, but the leaders that we have, the leaders that The United States has right now, and the leaders from the Likud party in Israel right now, our issue, it's not that America and Israel doesn't align. It's the leaders that are in charge in Israel that we're having issue with. And we don't always align. And when we don't always align, if you are in America and you happen to be Jewish and our interests don't align, and you are pursuing the interests of Israel rather than the United States when our interests don't align, that's treason, people. I'm sorry. That's treason.
The United States make two critical mistakes. One, on the one hand, is not delineating between America's interests and Israeli interests, because they're not always the same. But the second is always conflating criticism of a particular government with Jew hatred. Because if everything is Jew hatred, then nothing is Jew hatred. I actually think Jew hatred is very bad, which is why
Absolutely
I think we have to be very careful about not calling it's kind of like how progressives for 20 years called everything racist. And if everything's racism, nothing is racism.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And he's been getting a lot of criticism about that. It's not that our interests with Israel don't align. It's our interests with the particular government. And just because you criticize Netanyahu and you criticize the Likud party and these, I don't want to be nice, but these people that are running Israel right now, just because you're critical of them doesn't mean that you're anti-Semitic and you're being critical of all Jews, because our interests don't align. Now, Mark Levin is an American Jew. He's one of these people that Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about when he's addressing American Jews and Jews of the diaspora. He's talking to people like Mark Levin. He's got a radio show and TV show, very influential here in the United States. And when our interests don't align, the interests of the current administration, the Trump administration, and the Netanyahu administration, whose side is this guy on? Whose side is this guy on? Well, he spoke at the JNS event over the weekend. Let's listen to a little bit of Mark Levin.
And yet people keep giving opinions about me that aren't true. I read headlines and I go, did I say that? No, I didn't say that. So I just want to explain, I'm not an agent for the Israeli government. I don't meet with the Israeli government. I don't conspire with the Israeli government. Believe it or not, I love this country and I don't need any government to tell me that.
So the reason that he's saying that is because he went on to his show on Fox News over, I think this was just a few days ago over the weekend, and he criticizes people from the administration. He's talking about J.D. Vance and the statements that J.D. Vance is saying. And listen to what Mark Levin says.
I want to say to people in and out of the administration.
In and out of the administration. That means I'm talking about people in the administration. In and out of the administration. He wants to say this too.
I want to say to people in and out of the administration, stop trashing, smearing, bullying the little state of Israel. Stop cozying up to and telling us that the enemy regime in Iran is now more rational, more moderate, and a regime that we can deal with. When just a few months ago they slaughtered 50,000 people, they're still hanging young people today. And if they had a nuclear missile today, they'd fire it into our country as sure as I'm alive. I don't know what's going on, but if people think they can bully a little country, a people that have existed 4,000 years, through the Babylonians and the Persians, through the Romans and the Third Reich, into surrendering their defense and their decision on how to secure their country, they got another thing coming.
Well, why wasn't their country secure on October 7th? How did they get so surprised by Hamas hang gliding over the fence and all that? Come on. Is there ever going to be an investigation into the intelligence failures prior to October 7th, Mark Levin? And then people are showing this because Mark Levin is now, coming against the president of the United States, saying that this policy and this deal with Iran is bad and criticizing the president, where the interest of the United States and Israel are not the same. He seems to be siding with Israel, but people are bringing this up when he called President Trump the first Jewish president.
People do like Israel. Hold on. And he loves Israel too. It's true. 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. 6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, "This is our first Jewish president." Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidencies.
So they keep saying not consecutive because they have some theory that Trump can serve another term because it's not consecutive. And they wanted him to. They're all gung-ho about Trump. When he started this war with Iran, they loved him. First Jewish president and all this stuff. Now they're trashing him. This is Miriam Adelson's paper that came out with this article over the weekend. You could have been the greatest president of all, but you failed. That's why I wanted you to remember the name of this news, because they're the ones who sponsored this event, that Netanyahu and Levin and all these people spoke. This is Miriam Adelson's paper. You could have been the greatest president of all, but you failed is the headline. Because he stopped buying all that Cyrus the Great nonsense that they were feeding him and knew that they were just blowing smoke up his butt. I mean, Trump's not stupid. He sees what's going on. Mark Levin also made this statement in his speech at the JNS event over the weekend. And whoa, this one is, you just got to hear. You got to hear what this guy said. Mark Levin. Take a listen.
I've come to know him personally.
Him? Let me just tell you who him is. Who him is, who he's talking about. And he says, the first clip I played for you, Mark Levin says that I don't, do nothing with Israel. Let's listen to this one again first. Let's listen to this one again.
And yet people keep giving opinions about me that aren't true. I read headlines and I go, did I say that? No, I didn't say that. So I just want to explain, I'm not an agent for the Israeli government.
Not an agent for the Israeli government.
I don't meet with the Israeli government.
I don't meet with the Israeli government.
I don't conspire with the Israeli government.
I don't conspire with the Israeli government. Okay, so let's watch this other one. Okay, this is what he says. He's talking about Benjamin Netanyahu when in this clip.
I've come to know him personally, but even more than that, just reading about him when I'm in the United States and so forth, there are leaders like him that rarely come along. I talk about Trump and Churchill.
Leaders like Benjamin Netanyahu that rarely come along. Trump, Churchill. He's like Churchill. But Benjamin Netanyahu, that's what he's talking about.
When I'm in the United States and so forth, there are leaders like him that rarely come along. I talk about Trump and Churchill and Thatcher and Reagan and FDR. That's him. And I want to say one other thing that I said earlier, so the press will really get ticked off. And it's this. Britain made a big mistake at the end of World War II. They voted Churchill out of office. If the Israelis vote you out of office, I believe it's even worse. And I'll tell everybody why.
Listen to this, people. Listen to this. He's talking about Netanyahu because Netanyahu's got an election coming up. And listen, people. Netanyahu he's been prime minister for a total of almost 2 decades. If he's reelected, he'll be prime minister for 2 decades. This guy has done so much damage to the brand of Israel. Israel is so disliked and hated around the world right now because of Netanyahu and his administration. He's been prime minister for almost 2 decades. He's not liked in his own country. People, before October 7th, people were in the streets protesting him and his administration. They want him gone. They keep boasting all over, all the time that we're the only democracy in the region, that we're the only Western democracy in the region. And they're getting ready to have an election, and the people do not like Netanyahu And this guy who's an American shouldn't even be there, why are you even there talking about their election? He shouldn't have any influence over the election in Israel. But he's saying that it would be a mistake to vote Netanyahu, who's been in office for almost 2 decades. It would be a mistake to vote him out of office. And then he says this. Take a listen to what this guy says.
If the Israelis vote you out of office, I believe it's even worse. And I'll tell everybody why. Because the enemies of this country will be thrilled.
Wow. If you vote against Netanyahu, you are doing the work of the enemy, is what Mark Levin says. The American Jew. He's not even Israeli, but he's talking to the people of Israel because that's where his loyalty is. That if you vote this guy out of office, who allowed the worst terrorist attack in the history of Israel on his watch, no one's even had an investigation and how the security breach happened. He's got all of these accusations of fraud throughout his administration, trying to rig the judicial system, people protesting unhappy with him. But if you vote him out of office, you're doing the work of the terrorists. You're helping the terrorists, is what Mark Levin says.
And worse. They voted Churchill out of office. If the Israelis vote you out of office, I believe it's even worse. And I'll tell everybody why. Because the enemies of this country will be thrilled. Because they haven't been able to take him out. So if he's taken out by the voters, they will be thrilled. And I've looked at a lot of your candidates who've been around a long time. They're running to the right of him when they're to the left of him. And they said, we're going to do a bigger job with Iran, and we're going to do a better job with Hezbollah. Have you ever asked them how? What exactly are they going to do?
Netanyahu does the last thing that the Likuds want and Netanyahu want is for someone more moderate in Israel to come to power and for them to start having investigations into everything that's gone on since October 7th in 2002, because a lot of people in Israel need to be going to jail, namely Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister. Remember this, because, Mark Levin's gone back and forth to liking Trump, not liking Trump, liking Trump. He's the first Jewish president. Now he's not so good. Whenever he's doing, good things, for Israel, he's a good president. Whenever he's not doing good things for Israel, then I don't like him. Remember in the 2016 primary when Mark Levin was supporting Ted Cruz. Why would he be supporting Ted Cruz? But Mark Levin said this. Remember, Mark Levin started off when Trump first ran for president in 2016.
No, I back Cruz, and I'm going to continue to back Cruz. But here's what I'm going to do. As a result of what the Trump supporters have attempted here, particularly Roger Stone, I am not voting for Donald Trump. Period. So I want to congratulate Roger Stone. And if anybody has a problem with that, Donald Trump, you can talk to Roger Stone. These bully, dirty tricks, Nixonian tactics, they're only going to backfire. They're only going to backfire. So count me as never Trump.
Count me as never Trump. He's never Trump. Never Trump. To Trump's our first Jewish president to now, and why would, and he's, you heard him in the beginning. Yeah, I back Ted Cruz. Why would he back Ted Cruz? Well, why would he back Ted Cruz? Because Ted Cruz says this.
I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Right. Not the stated intention of being the leader defendant of Texans, the stated intention of being the leader defender of Israel. Of course, Mark Levin is going to back Ted Cruz back then. Of course. It's not surprising at all. This is another clip from Benjamin Netanyahu. We're talking about the crises of treason, the treason crises. And the treason crisis, again, look here at the Wikipedia page again. First sentence. Treason is the crime of attacking a state authority to which one owes allegiance. Does Benjamin Netanyahu owe allegiance to the United States? He says that they say that he's an ally. He's an ally. But I guess J.D. Vance said and got much criticism of, sometimes the interest of our allies doesn't align. Sometimes the interest of the Israeli government and the government of the United States doesn't align. But this is what Benjamin Netanyahu said.
They told me not to enter Rafah. I entered Rafah. I was told not to strike Hezbollah. We struck Hezbollah. They told me not to confront Iran. We confronted Iran.
I do what I want. I do what I want. You're not the boss of me. I do what I want, is what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying.
And today I want to begin with a simple question. What have we achieved?
What have you achieved?
Because these same people and their cronies in the press are trying to diminish our achievements. In fact, they're trying to erase them completely.
So listen to what he's saying. What have we achieved? So he talked about going into Rafah, which, that's Gaza. And I love how they try to conflate Gaza with Iran. Hamas is a Sunni Muslim Brotherhood organization. The Iranians are Shia. The Muslims are the Shia and the Sunni have been at war with one another and hated each other going back to the 8th, 9th century. So he talks about Rafah. What did you accomplish in Rafah? And talked about attacking Hezbollah. Hezbollah is Shia. They're aligned with Iran. But what do we accomplish? What are our accomplishments, is what he says.
Not to strike Hezbollah. We struck Hezbollah. They told me not to confront Iran. We confronted Iran. And today I want to begin with a simple question. What have we achieved? Because these same people and their cronies in the press are trying to diminish our achievements. In fact, they're trying to erase them completely. So what is it that we achieved? Here's what we achieved. We prevented Iran from carrying out a plan to annihilate us, and today they would have had a nuclear weapon, an atomic bomb to do so.
Wow. This guy spent years telling us that they were on the verge of getting nuclear weapons. Same thing he said about Iraq. He came to testify to Congress when Congress was debating authorizing George Bush, giving him the authorization to preemptively invade Iraq. This guy came and testified to Congress and said that they had a nuclear weapon. He's been saying for years, I can show you clips over and they're on the verge of having a nuclear weapon. They're getting ready to have the nuclear weapon. And he says, what have we accomplished with everything that we've done over the past, invading Rafah? What have we accomplished by invading Rafah? We prevented Iran from destroying us with the nuclear weapon. And you can't vote him out. If you vote him out, you're doing the work of the terrorists, is what Mark Levin says. It's interesting to see what's going on in Lebanon right now, because after the pager attack, I don't know if you guys remember the way they did the news stories and everything that everyone was saying after the pager attacks, where they blew up these pagers that Hezbollah, that they'd sold to Hezbollah leaders, and in a coordinated attack, they explode all of the pagers. This happened in 2004 in September. We'll read a little bit of this Wikipedia page because this is very interesting what's going on in Lebanon. 2024 Lebanon electronic device attack on 17 and 18. So it's 2 days of September 2004. Thousands of handheld pagers and hundreds of walkie-talkies intended for use by Hezbollah exploded simultaneously in two separate events across Lebanon, Syria, and Israeli attack nicknamed Operation Grim Reaper. According to a unnamed Hezbollah official, the attack took 1,500 lives, 1,500 Hezbollah fighters out of action due to injuries. According to the Lebanese government, the attack killed 42 people, including 12 civilians, and injured 40,000 civilians, according to Minister of Labor, member of Hezbollah. Victims' injuries. So they just explode these pagers. I don't know if you guys remember this, but the way that they talked about this afterwards is that they had destroyed Hezbollah, crippled Hezbollah. But I mean, they were on 60 Minutes. Take a listen to the 60 Minutes report. Just a little bit of it.
On September 17th, after Israel and the terrorist organization Hezbollah had been in an escalating war for nearly a year, the Israeli spy agency Mossad launched one of the most daring and sophisticated deceptions in the history of counterintelligence, the pager plot.
Yeah,
a modern
it's just daring and sophisticated is the way to talk about it. They destroyed. Look at this this headline right here in this video. They destroyed Hezbollah. Now we know how Hezbollah was destroyed with pagers, with the pager, and that's the way they talked about it. And basically, let's watch this. Survivors of Israel's pager attack on Hezbollah struggle to recover. Anyway, yeah, man, they told us that Hezbollah was done.
2024, Hussein Tahini was playing on his mobile phone at home when an unfamiliar buzzing rang through the house. It was coming from his dad's pager.
So there were women, children killed, little girls that were killed and all this stuff. But they told us that it was all worth it because in this sophisticated attack, this brilliant attack, remember this video was going around, the guy in a grocery store, when his pager goes off, they made pager jokes. They were making all these pager jokes and stuff like that. And yeah, they told us that they had crippled Hezbollah, that Hezbollah was done. And now they have to invade in Lebanon, occupy southern Lebanon because of Hezbollah. And, just 2 years later, what happened to that? What happened to this strategy? So, I mean, what's going on? And this is what's really, causing a problem in Iran and the United States coming to a negotiated deal at this time. Hold on one moment. I'm trying to play us out. Anyway, yeah, this what's going on in Lebanon. So, anyway, we're going to talk about another crisis on Friday, and I'll see you guys on Friday. Have a good week.